This happened a few months ago. I was 32 and had just moved to a quiet suburb after years of living in the city. I thought it would be nice here. The homes were modest, and the tall oak trees filled the streets. It felt calm and safe, or at least I thought it would. I was trying to rebuild my life and spent long hours working as a graphic designer. One night, I left the office later than usual. The day dragged on, and I didn't want to talk to anyone. As I walked home, the darkness wrapped around me like a blanket. But then I heard it, soft footsteps behind me. I thought, maybe it's a jogger. I shook it off. When I got home, I locked the door and tried to forget the chill creeping over me. I sat down to work, convincing myself it was nothing. But the next night, the footsteps came back. That same soft sound. I looked over my shoulder but saw nothing. My heart started to race. Maybe I'm just tired, I thought, but it was hard to push it away. Each night after that, the footsteps followed. A whispering presence I couldn't ignore. One evening, I saw a shadow dart near my house. It was quick, just a blur. I wanted to convince myself it didn't matter, but something gnawed at me. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks. Still, when I closed my eyes to sleep, I felt eyes watching me. I began to check the doors and windows. I was scared and didn't know why. I decided to be brave one night and stepped outside. The air was cold. I walked along the dim street, looking around. I felt that same watchful presence. When I didn't find anything, I told myself I was being foolish. But it didn't help my nerves. Days went by, and I heard unsettling rumors around the neighborhood. My neighbor next door had vanished just weeks before. People whispered about how strange he had been, saying he wandered his yard at night. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to focus on my work, but the shadows visited me more and more. Then the footsteps grew louder. I stood still one night, holding my breath. I looked out the window and saw a figure standing in my yard. My heart raced. I blinked, and it was gone. I thought, what on earth is happening? I turned back to my room, and suddenly the figure was there again. My breath stopped as it stared right at me. I couldn't move. It felt like I was staring at a puzzle, but I couldn't figure it out. What did it want? I still don't know. I think about it every day. The feeling that something is still out there, waiting for me, still haunts me. I don't understand what happened that night or why those footsteps followed me home. I just hope they don't come back. The next day, I decided I needed to take action. I couldn't let fear control my life. I went for a run in the morning, hoping that some exercise would clear my head. The sun peeked through the trees, and I felt a bit stronger as I jogged through the neighborhood. But as I passed my neighbor's empty house, that familiar chill settled back on me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened there. Later, I visited the local library. I wanted to dig into the history of the neighborhood, thinking maybe there were answers within the dusty books. I spent hours looking through old newspapers and archives. A few articles caught my eye, detailing odd occurrences and missing persons. They mentioned the very same neighbor who had disappeared. I frowned as I read about him wandering late at night. That evening, my nerves were on edge. I didn't want to go home alone. I picked up takeout to bring back, hoping that normalcy would quiet my mind. Halfway through my meal, I heard it again, the footsteps. This time, they were louder. The sound echoed against my walls, as if someone was right outside, pacing back and forth. I bolted to the window, pulling the curtain aside. The streetlights illuminated my yard, but I saw no one. My hands trembled as I gripped the curtain rod. I took a deep breath and collected my courage. Maybe I could confront whatever it was. I shoved my phone into my pocket and stepped outside, the night air sharp against my skin. I called out, "Is anyone there?" Silence swallowed my words. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding in the quiet. Just as I began to turn back, I saw it. A flicker of movement behind a tree across the street. The shadow shifted and darted away. I chased after it, barely thinking. My feet moved faster than my mind could grasp. I reached the tree, breathing hard, but found nothing. Frustration surged within me. "Come out!" I shouted, but my voice betrayed me, sounding weak in the stillness. Then I noticed something on the ground. Footprints. Strange indentations in the mud, perfectly shaped as if made by boots. I knelt down to examine them. They were larger than my own and led away into the brush behind the tree. My heart raced again. Who had been here? Why did they leave in such a hurry? As I followed the tracks, I felt a sudden prickling on the back of my neck. A chilling wind swept through, and I turned around in panic. Standing there, at the edge of my yard, was the figure I had seen before. Its features were obscured by the shadows, but I could feel it watching me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the footprints. I looked again, and it was gone. My breath quickened. I hadn't just imagined it, had I? I needed answers. But what if I didn't like what I found? That's when I noticed the shape of something sticking out from behind the tree. A glimmer caught my eye. I walked over, heart pounding, and reached for it. As I pulled it free, the moonlight revealed what I had found. A small, tattered notebook. I opened it, my fingers shaking, ready to discover whatever strange truths awaited. The pages of the notebook were crumpled and yellowed with age. I squinted in the dim light, trying to decipher the faded ink. There were sketches of the neighborhood, marked with arrows and notes in the margins. Some of the notes mentioned strange lights and noises coming from the woods. Others detailed the disappearance of my neighbor, but what stood out were the last few entries. "Not safe," one read. "They watch from the shadows." Another claimed, "The footsteps follow. Can't run forever." A chill ran down my spine. The last entry was dated only a week ago. Had someone else experienced the same fear I had? I flipped back a few pages, searching for more clues. My heart raced as I came across a drawing resembling the tree I was standing beside. It had a large X marked at its base with the words, "Dig here." My hands shook and I glanced around, half expecting someone to leap out from the shadows and confront me. Why had this person marked this tree? Then I heard it again, the distinct sound of footsteps on the gravel behind me. The noises grew louder, coming closer. Panic surged through me. I hurriedly shoved the notebook into my pocket and turned back toward my house. I was almost there when I heard a voice. "Don't run." It was low and gravelly, sending a visceral instinct to flee straight through me. I stumbled, almost losing my footing, but I managed to keep moving. I burst through my front door and locked it, breathing heavily. I leaned against the door, trying to steady myself. I could still hear the footsteps outside, lingering just beyond my front porch. My phone was still in my pocket, and I quickly pulled it out, my fingers fumbling as I unlocked it. I thought about calling for help, but who would believe me? My mind raced through the possibilities. I knew I needed to figure this out, even if I was terrified. I opened the notebook again. The last page had a name scrawled at the bottom. Elena. Who was she? I took a deep breath and decided I needed to learn more about her. As I flipped through the pages again, something caught my eye. Tucked into the center was a photograph, a blurry image of a group of people standing next to the very same tree. They looked familiar, or maybe they reminded me of the faces I'd seen at the park. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the direction of my back door. My heart stopped. Had someone followed me inside? I moved quietly to the kitchen, each step a conscious effort to remain silent. Peering through the window, I could see the shadows shifting again outside. I felt that same cold grip of fear as I realized I was not alone. I decided I couldn't wait anymore. I had to know what was out there. I had to confront this threat head-on before it became something I regretted. Gripping the notebook tightly, I stepped away from the window, the sound of footsteps accompanying me as I made my way to the back door. But before I could open it, I heard a whisper, close and menacing. "You shouldn't have come here." And just like that, Fear washed over me again. What had I gotten myself into? I stood frozen in front of the back door, my heart drumming like a wild animal trapped in a cage. The whisper echoed in my mind, muddying my thoughts. Who was out there? Why had they been watching me? Then the footsteps started again, this time louder, as if whoever was outside had decided to make their presence known. I instinctively pressed my ear against the door, trying to catch any other sounds. It felt like if I listened closely enough, I might be able to hear a name, an explanation, something that could justify my growing fear. I couldn't just wait. There had to be a way to find out what was going on. I shuffled back to the window and peered out. My breath caught in my throat. Shadows moved together, forming a group by the edge of the woods. They seemed to be watching my house, arms crossed, standing still like statues. My thoughts raced. Was that Elena? Was she involved? Driven by a desperate need to know, I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. The beam cut through the darkness as I turned it on, sweeping across the backyard. The figures were gone. My pulse hammered in my ears. Maybe they had scattered, but part of me knew they were still out there, lingering in the darkness. I backed away from the window and glanced at the notebook again. My fingers trembled as I opened it, searching for anything that could give me a clue. Perhaps Elena had some connection to the people in that photo. Maybe they were friends or family who disappeared too. The thought made me shudder. Suddenly, I saw something wedged beneath the photograph. A small, folded piece of paper. I tugged it free, nearly tearing it in my haste. As I unfolded it, anxiety bubbled within me. It was a note, written in hurried, jagged handwriting. Don't trust them. They're not who you think. The tree holds the key. What tree? I panicked for a moment, remembering the one marked with an X. Was that the same tree? The urge to investigate took hold of me again. I didn't want to dig, but I felt like I had to. There was too much at stake. But before I could decide my next move, another loud bang shattered my focus. This time it was on the front door. I froze, my breath caught. Someone, or something, was trying to get in. The fear surged through me like icy water. I dropped the flashlight, scrambling back toward the kitchen. My mind raced. I had to secure myself somehow. I grabbed a kitchen drawer and yanked it open. Inside, I found a small carving knife. It wasn't much, but it felt better than nothing. Then I heard the voice again, this time muffled but unmistakable. We just want to talk. A chill crept up my spine, and I knew I was in over my head. I glanced around, searching for a way out, my only thought now to survive this night. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Everything went dark for a split second, and in that instant, I heard footsteps rushing toward me, not from outside, but from deep within the house. My pulse quickened. They were already inside. I couldn't breathe. The darkness felt thick, smothering me as I turned on my heel. I knew I had to get out of the kitchen. Heart pounding, I dashed toward the living room, holding the carving knife tightly. The footsteps echoed behind me, heavy, hurried, unrelenting. I could barely see, but instinct guided me. I made it to the living room and skidded to a stop. I needed a way to block the door, but there was no furniture to push against it. The floor creaked ominously as I heard the footsteps draw closer, each sound sharpening my fear. I felt the wall against my back, the cool surface anchoring me. If only I had a weapon, a safe place to hide. But this was it. I had nowhere to go. Please, the voice pleaded again, more urgent this time. We just want to talk. We need your help. Help? The last thing I wanted to do was help whoever was in my house, but familiarity tugged at my mind. There was something about the voice, a mix of desperation and fear. I felt rage rise within me, battling with confusion. Then I saw it, dim light filtering from under the front door. Someone was at the entrance. I took a shaky step forward, but then froze. The door started to rattle. Just listen! We need you to understand. I squinted at the source of the light. Shadows swayed just beyond the doorframe. I could almost make out their shapes, no more than silhouettes, but my brain struggled to connect their presence to anything reassuring. I positioned myself deeper into the room, praying they wouldn't find me. I had to think. "What do you want from me?" I blurted out, my voice trembling. "Your sister." Their voice trailed off. For a brief moment, silence hung in the air, cutting through the fear like a knife. Elena. The word pulsed in my mind. My body tensed. "What about her?" "She's in danger. We know where she is," the voice answered, desperation etched in every syllable. "But you need to let us in. It's the only way." A mix of anger and helplessness clawed at me. If they were lying, I could be walking right into a trap, but if they were telling the truth, then I had to act fast. That was when I noticed a shadow lurking in the corner of the room. It had separated from the others, moving silently toward me. I gripped the knife tighter, ready to defend myself. "Please, you don't understand," the voice continued. "It's about the tree. We need to get to the tree, the one with the X. We don't have much time." The revelation slammed into me. The tree. Whatever it was hiding, it felt like my only chance to get answers. But I had no clue who these people were. Before I could respond, the shadow lunged forward. In one swift motion, I swung the knife, heart racing. But my eyes widened in horror when I realized it wasn't just a shadow. A face emerged, familiar yet distorted in the dim light. "Don't!" the voice cried out. It was Elena. I froze, the knife hanging limply in my hand. Elena stood before me, eyes wide and frantic. Panic washed over me, drowning any sense of rational thought. "What are you doing here?" I rasped, my heart threatening to burst through my chest. "Listen to me," she shouted, urgency palpable in her tone. "You don't have—" "Don't have what?" I interrupted, still gripping the knife. I didn't know if I should defend myself or pull her into a hug. "You shouldn't be here. You need to leave." Her face twisted in frustration, and I could see how scared she was. "I'm not the enemy. You don't know what's going on." She took a step closer, the shadows from outside wrapping around us. "Please, we don't have time." I glanced back at the door. The rattling had stopped, but I could hear muffled voices outside. Whatever was going to happen next felt like it was hanging above us, waiting to drop. "Why would I help you?" My voice dripped with skepticism. "You—" She shook her head, cutting me off again. "You think I wanted to threaten you? I came to warn you. About them." Before I could ask who they were, she motioned toward the front door. "If they are here, it means he has found you." "He?" My skin prickled with every word. "Who is he?" "I don't know. I just know that if you don't trust me now, it's going to be too late." Her voice cracked slightly, and I saw her fear reflected in my own heart. The rest of the world didn't matter as I processed her words. The knife felt heavier, and the reality of my situation clicked into place. "You said something about a tree?" The shadows deepened, closing in around us. "Yes, the tree with the X. If we can reach it, we might have a chance to stop him." I didn't know what to believe. Everything felt out of control. What if we walked out there into a trap? I almost choked on the weight of the decision. Then came a loud bang at the door, snapping me out of my thoughts. "Elena!" I shouted as I instinctively stepped back. "What do we do?" "We need to go now." She reached for my arm, her grip firm despite her trembling hands. The moment our skin touched, a jolt of electricity shot through me, waking me up in ways I hadn't realized I was asleep. But before I could respond, the door splintered as someone kicked it. My breathing quickened, and I looked back helplessly, feeling like the walls were closing in. "We can't stay here," Elena urged, eyes flashing with determination. "Okay," I whispered, gripping my knife again. "Where's the tree?" "Out back," she said, nodding toward the rear exit. As the door crashed open, shadows poured into the room, dark figures materializing against the dim light. My instincts screamed for me to run, but I felt rooted to the spot. I could see their faces now, twisted, angry. Go! Elena hissed, pulling me toward the back door. I obeyed, fear flooding my veins as I sprinted ahead of her, wide-eyed and desperate. We slipped through the kitchen and into the dark backyard. The wind whipped at us, and for a moment I could hardly breathe, but then I spotted it, the tree, looming like a guardian in the night. We raced toward it, but just as I reached out to touch the rough bark, a cold hand clamped down on my shoulder, spinning me around. I told you to come back, a voice growled. It was too familiar, too close. I gasped as the face of my tormentor emerged from the shadows. I found you at last. I felt a surge of panic as I faced him, the chill of his grip burning through my shirt. You, I stuttered, trying to swallow back the fear that clawed at my throat. The face before me was one I had hoped never to see again, and yet here he was, lurking in the dark, with a sinister smile that sent shivers down my spine. Surprised to see me? He taunted, his eyes glinting with malevolence. Elena, run! I shouted, not taking my eyes off him. I needed her safe, even if it meant confronting him alone. But she didn't move. Instead, she stood frozen beside me, her expression a mix of fear and determination. Who is he? She whispered, eyes darting between us. He's the reason I couldn't finish my sentence. I felt helpless, the weight of my past rushing back. But there was no time for weakness now. Why are you here? I spat at him. What do you want from me? I just want to help, he said mockingly, stepping closer. I could smell the dampness of the earth on him, a reminder of the darkness that surrounded us. Or maybe I want to finish what I started. Stay back, I warned, raising the knife again, though my hand shook. I couldn't let him see my fear. I mean it, he chuckled, a low, chilling sound that sent another wave of dread crashing over me. You think that little thing can protect you? You have no idea how much trouble you're in. Suddenly, shadows shifted around him, merging into darker forms that seemed to pulse like a living entity. Horror flooded my senses as I realized he wasn't alone. More figures emerged, their silhouettes shifting and merging, becoming a wall of darkness creeping toward us. Elena! I yelled again, urgency consuming me. We have to go. Just as I turned to pull her away, he lunged for me, grasping my wrist with a grip like iron. I twisted, trying to break free, but he was stronger than I remembered. You can't run from this, he hissed into my ear, and I felt a surge of fury mingle with my fear. With a burst of adrenaline, I swung the knife, connecting with his forearm. He reacted with a sharp intake of breath, recoiling slightly. The pain in his eyes was satisfying, but I knew it wouldn't deter him for long. Now! I shouted, and Elena finally sprang into action and darted toward the tree. I followed, adrenaline pushing me forward despite the grip of panic still clutching at my chest. As we reached the tree, I pressed my back against its rough bark, breathing heavily. I could hear the figures stalking behind us, their breath a low whisper carried by the wind. What do we do now? Elena's voice trembled. I don't know, I admitted, desperately scanning the darkness. But we can't stay here. Then a chilling realization hit me. The tree was marked. The X carved into the bark felt warm against my palm. Something began to hum in the air, a resonance that felt both foreign and familiar. Look, Elena pointed at the ground. There's something buried here. Without thinking, I dropped to my knees, digging through the dirt with my hands. My breath quickened as I unearthed a small box, heavy and ancient. The whispers in the shadows grew louder, more insistent, and the hunt was closing in. I opened the box, gasping at what I found inside. But before I could catch my breath, the darkness moved again. They were here, and they weren't friendly. We have to go, I shouted urgently. But that was when the ground trembled beneath us, and everything went dark. I fell into darkness, swallowed by the void. The silence was deafening. I couldn't see, couldn't hear anything but my own ragged breaths. Then the ground jolted again, and a strange weight pressed down on my chest, as if the earth itself was trying to keep me pinned. "Elena!" I called, hoping my voice could pierce through the blackness. My panic rose as I strained to listen for her response, but the only sound was the pounding of my heart, echoing in my ears. Suddenly, a sliver of light broke through. I shielded my eyes as the light expanded, revealing a small clearing. But we were no longer at the tree. The ancient box lay discarded beside me, the lid slightly ajar. I could see the glimmer of whatever was inside. If only I could grab it. "Elena!" I shouted again, scrambling to my feet. The dark figures had to be nearby, but I had to find her first. I scanned the area, panic seeping into my bones. "Where are you?" Then I heard it, a soft rustling in the brush. My hands instinctively clenched around the knife. I prepared for an attack, tensing every muscle in my body. But as the rustling grew louder, I felt my gut twist with dread. A figure emerged. It was Elena, her eyes wide, face pale. Relief washed over me, but it faded quickly as I noticed the shadows creeping behind her, coiling like smoke. "We need to go," she whispered urgently, her voice trembling. "They're coming." I didn't need to ask who she meant. "What did you see?" I stammered, pushing down the fear that gripped me. They were everywhere. I thought I was trapped." Her eyes darted to the darkness behind her, and I felt the creeping sense of dread crawling back. Before I could respond, the ground rattled beneath our feet again. We stumbled, trying to regain our balance. The shadows loomed closer, grotesque shapes swirling, hungry for something they couldn't discern but wanted desperately. I turned to the box. "The key! It must be in here!" I rushed toward it, adrenaline and hope coursing through me. But my fingers trembled as I reached for it. As I opened the box wider, a fiery glow emanated from within. I gasped. Inside were symbols etched into a crimson stone. I didn't understand their meaning, but a wave of warmth surged from the stone, filling me with a sense of purpose. But the shadows surged again, the air thick with malice. "What are you?" I shouted at the darkness, clutching the box tightly. "This is our last chance," Elena said, her breath hitching. "You have to use it." "Use it? Use what?" I could barely comprehend what was happening. I looked back at her, but the shadows were closing in. I sensed urgency in her gaze. That's when I made my choice. Whatever was happening, I couldn't let it tear us apart. I took a deep breath and raised the stone into the air, the warmth coursing through my hand. "Stay close," I cried out. And then I felt it. There was a shift. The shadows paused, hesitating as if caught in a net, but the moment didn't last long. They rushed at us again, but this time I had a weapon. "Let's end this!" I yelled, and I hurled the box forward, watching it arc through the air. Something snapped as it hit the ground, and the world around us erupted in light. And then, silence. The silence hung thick as I blinked against the blinding light. It wrapped around us, pulsing like a heartbeat, and I felt a strange calm wash over me. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the light receded, leaving us in a dim glow. I looked around, breathless, but the shadows were gone. "Elena?" I whispered, searching for her in the fading illumination. "I'm here," she replied, her voice steadying. "What just happened?" "I don't know," I said, shaking my head. "But I think we're safe." She moved closer, and I could see the confusion in her eyes. "Safe? Did you see what those things were?" "Whatever they were, they backed off when the stone glowed," I said, glancing down at the crimson stone, now warm and still pulsing faintly. "Maybe it's a defense mechanism?" Elena nodded but looked past me, her gaze distant. "What did you feel when you held it?" I thought about it, the warmth, the purpose. It was like it was calling to me. It felt powerful. I frowned, but I still don't get it. Suddenly, a noise shattered the quiet. It came from somewhere deeper within the clearing, a soft crunching, like something moving through the brush. My heart raced as I turned toward the sound. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah," Elena whispered, her eyes wide again. "Stay back." We edged closer together, my grip on the knife tightening. From the shadows of the trees, more shapes began to take form. Not the grotesque ones from before. These were different, more human-like, but distorted, almost familiar. They stepped forward, shadows twisting around them, faces obscured. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to sound confident even as my stomach churned with dread. One figure stepped forward, and I squinted against the dim light. I felt a chill as recognition hit me. No, it can't be. "Elena, do you see that?" I asked, my voice thick in my throat. "It looks like... my brother?" She looked at me, then back at the figure, but uncertainty clouded her expression. "It can't be him. Not here." But I couldn't shake the sense that it was him, transformed by whatever darkness had lingered in this place. "Josh!" I shouted, taking a step forward. "Is that you?" The figure froze, shadows writhing around him. He tilted his head, unsure. I didn't know you were here," he said, his voice distant, as if floating through a dream. "Elena, it is him!" I yelled, but my excitement was tinged with fear. I wanted to rush forward, but something held me back. "How did you get here?" "I don't know," Josh said. "It's so dark." He struggled to push through the shadowy haze. "Help me!" "Don't move!" Elena shouted suddenly. She grabbed my arm, pulling me back. The shadows around my brother began to pool at his feet, dark tendrils reaching for him, hungry again. I didn't know what to do. The stone felt warmer in my pocket, almost anxious. I glanced at Elena. "What do we do?" "Use the stone," she urged, her face pale. "It's the only chance we have." But as I stepped forward, ready to fight against the encroaching shadows, something in the darkness twisted. Then, everything went dark. I felt the ground below me shift, like a tide pulling me under. I was enveloped in an abyss where sound and light seemed to bend and twist, muddling my bearings. Then, just as quickly as it started, the world snapped back into focus. I was standing once more beneath the ancient tree, its branches dancing in a cool breeze. "Elena!" I gasped, looking around frantically. "Are you here?" Just as panic began to bleed into my thoughts, a familiar figure sprang into view. Elena emerged from the shadows, her face marked with uncertainty. "I thought we lost you." Where's my brother?" I managed to choke out. The darkness had been so encompassing, like a veil drawn over reality. I feared he wouldn't make it through. "He was... there," she said, her words faltering. But then this wave hit. I didn't see what happened next. I closed my eyes, pulling in air as panic crept back into my chest. What if he's lost to the dark? The weight of my dread was almost enough to suffocate me. "We have to try," she urged, her voice unyielding. "Remember the stone? Maybe we can use it to bring him back." I nodded, my fingers reaching instinctively to the crimson stone that lay at the foot of the tree. As I bent to touch it, I was struck by its warmth, a pulse that seemed synchronized with my own heartbeat. Gathering my courage, I lifted the stone, the cool night air growing warm and electric around us. But just then, the shadows once again flickered around the tree, dark tendrils stretching outward as if they were alive, seeking something, perhaps seeking me. I gripped the stone tighter, its heat radiating through my palm. "Elena, stay close," I shouted, as the darkness writhed with a consciousness all its own, blurring the boundary between threat and sanctuary. "Focus," she said, moving beside me. "What you felt before, pass that energy through the stone." I nodded, pressing my eyes shut, pulling every ounce of frustration, grief, and love I had for Josh deep within me. I envisioned our childhood, memories bright and vibrant against the looming blackness. Cradling the stone in both hands, I let that energy surge to the surface and directed it toward the ground at the base of the tree. "Please," I breathed, somewhere between a prayer and a command. "Come back to us." A sudden jolt reverberated through the air, a rush of wind swirling around us, lifting leaves and debris into a frenzied dance. The stone pulsed against my palms, and I felt a connection form, something ancient and potent that churned through the layers of time itself. The very ground shook beneath us, the shadows stilled and seemed to lean closer, drawn toward the eruption of light surrounding the stone. Then it happened. A brilliant flash ignited from the stone, a fierce explosion that momentarily washed the darkness away. It washed over me like a tidal wave, erasing the shadows and leaving a void behind. For a heartbeat, I felt nothing but clarity. But just as quickly, that clarity twisted back into something disorienting. "Do you feel that?" Elena questioned, her voice reverberating in the odd, weightless silence surrounding us. I nodded, wary but hopeful. "Something's shifting." From the clearing, a form began to assemble within the torrents of light. Pale and translucent, a silhouette appeared, flickering like an old film reel. "Josh," I whispered, fear clawing at my throat as I strained to see. As the figure took shape, it was unmistakable. My brother was back, his eyes wide and searching as he looked at us, confusion mixed with familiarity. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice fading in and out like a distant echo. "Are you okay?" I felt tears well in my eyes. "We thought we lost you." "Lost?" He shook his head, shadows still clinging to the edges of his form. "It's dark there, so dark. I didn't know how to get back." His eyes found the stone, and he took a tentative step closer, almost as if drawn by a magnetic force. "Hold on to the warmth," Elena encouraged, and I felt a flicker of renewed energy surge within me. "Follow that feeling." Josh hesitated, then moved toward the stone, wrapping his fingers around it. The moment he touched it, light erupted forth with a piercing brilliance, illuminating the shadows like a sun breaking free from the clouds. The dark figures shrieked, painfully recoiling from the warmth. "Come on!" I urged, my heart hammering as the shadows began to disintegrate back into the air from which they came. "We have to go." Josh moved forward, and as I locked eyes with him, I saw not just fear, but fierce determination reflected back. "Together," he cried. In an instinctive response, I grabbed Elena's hand, and together we propelled ourselves toward Josh. The pulsating light grew brighter with each step, burning away the remnants of fear. We pushed through, feeling the weight of the past lifting as we sprinted into the blazing force of the light. Then, as if a horizon parted before us, we burst free, no longer standing beneath the tree, but instead collapsing on the familiar grass of my backyard. Gasping for breath, we looked around as dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in tones of pink and gold. A stillness lingered in the air, a calm that felt surreal. We made it. I breathed, almost in disbelief. But as I raised my head to meet Josh's gaze, uncertainty flickered again within me. Did we truly escape? Or were we simply moving deeper into something we couldn't understand? The memories loomed, the footsteps, the shadows, and the secrets those woods held. And just as those thoughts settled in, deep within the woods behind us, a low whisper echoed, unsettling, but somehow tantalizingly familiar. There were still answers to seek, mysteries remaining. Some nights, like those footsteps I used to hear, I would find myself listening, waiting to feel that familiar presence again. I don't know if I'll ever find out if it was dream or reality, but truth, like shadows, sometimes remains just out of reach. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if my neighbor is still there, if those things still happen. But mostly I try not to think about it.